everyone, it's Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to talk about Israel, and we're going to talk about surveillance technology. But before we do that, let me remind you that I recommend, I humbly request that you bookmark theconsciousresistance.com to make sure you get all of our latest content, videos, essays, etc., etc., etc. Follow us on Minds, follow us on Steam at DTube, join our Discord channel, follow us via our text list on Remind. You can follow us on BitChute, and of course support via Patreon or Subscribestar. Sign up for our email newsletter, and if you want to get any Kratom or CBD, check it out at My Brave Botanicals right here. Alright, so let's get right on into this. There's this new report from Politico talking about surveillance. Surveillance coming from not the Russians, not the Chinese. Who else could it be? The Israelis. Israel accused of planting mysterious spy devices near the White House. The likely Israeli spying efforts were uncovered during the Trump presidency, several former top U.S. officials said. The U.S. government concluded within the past 2 years that Israel was most likely behind the placement of cell phone surveillance devices that were found near the White House and other sensitive locations around Washington, according to 3 former senior U.S. officials with knowledge of the matter. But unlike most other occasions when flagrant incidents of foreign spying have been discovered on American soil, the Trump administration did not rebuke the Israeli government, and there was no consequences for Israel's behavior, one of the former officials said. Now, I just want to make it clear. Of course, Politico tends to lean left. They do good work either way. They tend to lean left, so this writer might be trying to stick it to Trump at the moment, but let's just be real about it. Israel, Democrats, Republicans, they all support them. That's why the few Democrats and any individual who's willing to actually speak up about Israel gets called anti-Semitic. I've told you guys how my videos recently with Christopher Bolin on 9/11 and Zionism was taken down by YouTube. Not just, censored, but completely taken down. So, they can try to frame this like, oh, the Trump administration chose not to take action, but we all know, everybody in the room, all of you, you too, I'm talking to you too, we know that Israel is supported by both parties for one reason or the other, and we can all speculate or, kind of put our theories forward on why that is. But for the moment, let's hold off. The miniature surveillance devices, colloquially known as Stingrays, mimic regular cell towers to fool cell phones into giving them their locations and identity information. Formerly called International Mobile Subscribers, Identity Catchers, or IMSI catchers, they also capture the contents of phone calls and data use. And some of you may remember that I've covered this extensively for years. This is an investigation I did for Mint Press News. Secrecy around Stingray cell phone surveillance persists despite growing transparency efforts. This was back in April 2015 when I was writing about federal governments, local law enforcement, and the Harris Corporation and how they're using the Stingray cell phone devices. And I wrote about the Houston Police Department. I had a source, local source, that helped me get some information on how the Houston Police Department and Houston City Council had approved the use of Stingrays and how it works exactly, and I was able to get some information about that. So I've been covering that for a while. You can even go back further. Here I am on local news in Houston in March 2015. This is when I was really hot on the trail of this, and I started looking into this because I was being targeted by the Houston Police Department, and they were trying to come after me. I'll put all these links below for those who are totally unaware of this story, and there's even local news reports on the Chronicle where they quote me as, I have my ad blocker on, but this is an article from the Chronicle talking about HPD wanting to get Stingrays, and it quotes me and my work there. So this is something I've been familiar with, and if you follow my work for a long time on the surveillance side of research, you understand I've been keeping up with this. So I've talked about how this device, the Stingray, can be used not just by governments and local police departments, but really any criminal, any person off the street with the knowledge, basically be able to track and gather people's data. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. And they claim that they can't see the actual contents, it's just metadata. But no, they can actually, in the newer devices, which are, they have different names, they all seem to be aquatic, hammerfish, kingfish, and things like this. In addition to Stingray, they can actually gather images, they can actually gather contents of your conversation, and they're not targeted. So if they're coming to look for a criminal, let's assume, let's give them the benefit of the doubt for a moment, and they are coming in a neighborhood where they think the criminal is, they have their phone number, it's not like it only, shows them where the person is. It basically pings every cell phone in the area, and in the process gathers data from those phones. And we have the information, the public and most of these departments around the country have no understanding, no say of how long that data is saved, what it's used for, where it goes, etc., etc., etc. So it's just a horrible situation. And as is this case, it can be used against the government themselves. So this story, though, regarding Israel, now that we've explained what stingrays are, for those who are not familiar, back in April, several senior congressmen demanded immediate action over the mysterious fake cell towers that started appearing around Washington, D.C., and sent a letter to FCC Chair Ajit Pai asking him to, quote, address the prevalence of what could be hostile foreign cell site simulators, or stingrays, surveying Americans in the nation's capital. So, yeah, basically that's what happened is throughout the last year or so, people have started to report, there was reports that there was fake cell phone towers placed around the D.C. area, and they didn't know where they came from, if it was the local cops, if it was, the government, whatever it was. But according to new reports that Politico is saying, based on, three former senior U.S. officials with knowledge of the matter, that it was concluded that it was Israel, and that Trump is doing nothing about it. But again, it's because Trump and all these people are part of they work with the Zionists. Trump is reputed to be lax in observing White House security protocols. Politico reported in May 2018 that the president often used an insufficiently secured cell phone to communicate with friends and confidants. The New York Times reported in October 2018 that Chinese spies are often listening to his calls, prompting Trump to slam the story as incorrect. I do not have time here to correct it. So I don't know. They're saying he's lax with this, but again, this is not about being lax. This is about that the United States, some level of the U.S. government, whatever you want to call them, deep state, etc., was probably aware that Israel's spying on Americans and on that area. In fact, it might be kind of like they have D.C. held hostage, so they've got, they're spying on everything they do there, and maybe the people who are in the know in D.C. know that, hey, the Israelis are always listening, so watch what you say, because that's how they're going to get that blackmail on you, in addition to the rings that people like Jeffrey Epstein and others were involved in. It said, Israeli embassy spokesperson Elad Strommeyer denied that Israel placed the devices and said, quote, these allegations are absolute nonsense. Israel does not conduct espionage operations in the United States, period. Let's all have a laugh. Ha. Former senior intelligence officials said it was pretty clear that Israelis were responsible. One of the former officials said the analysis is typically led by the FBI's counterintelligence division and involves examining the devices so that, quote, they tell you a little bit about their history, where the parts and pieces are from, how old they are, who had access to them, and that will help to get you to the origins. For these investigations, the Bureau often leans on the NSA and sometimes the CIA. But yeah, they're saying a forensic analysis points the finger at Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu also denied after publication that Israel was behind the devices. We have a directive. I have a directive. No intelligence work in the U.S. No spies, he said in a gaggle with reporters, and it's vigorously implemented without any exception. The report is a complete fabrication, But former officials with deep experience detailing intelligence matters scoff at the Israeli claim. A pro forma denial Israeli officials are also known to make in private to skeptical U.S. counterparts. One former senior U.S. official noted that the FBI and other agencies concluded that Israel was most likely responsible for the devices. The Trump administration took no action to punish or even privately scold the Israeli government. But yeah, these are all based on anonymous officials, but I think that's a pretty safe bet. Now, let's go on here. While the Chinese, who have been regularly caught doing intelligence operations in the U.S., were also seen as potential suspects, they were determined as unlikely to have placed the devices based on a close analysis of the devices. So, it's not the Chinese, is what it seems. And again, these are called IMSI catchers, stingrays, or cell site simulators if you want to look them up and find out more about them. I definitely recommend doing so. And again, I will include my links if you want to get all of my links as far as what we're doing here with exposing stingrays, because I do think that stingrays is still an important topic. If you haven't ever read my reports, they're 4 years old, but they're still relevant. Stingrays are still taking place in parts around the country. There are still cities that are trying to fight it. There are cases making their way through the courts. Ultimately, it'll probably go to the Supreme Court. But does anybody here think that they can just sit back and wait and trust the Supreme Court to work it out and everything will be fine? In the meantime, your data is being gathered by either facial recognition, scanning, license plate readers, Stingray devices, new smart streetlights that can listen and can monitor on you. We have a story about that coming up. We're going to be talking about Chinese social media monitoring, as well as other types of social credit scores and things that are getting more and more predominant in the U.S. and they're coming to, in China, and they're coming to the U.S. So we have this infrastructure being built around us of the surveillance state. And I know you guys are, yeah, Derrick, we've seen this, but what the hell? You know, we need to talk to people. Don't you guys understand the urgency? Or maybe I'm nuts, right? I've been talking about this for for the last 10 years, but specifically about stingrays for about 4 or 5 years now. And people have listened here and there, but for the most part, people are still sleeping about it. Are you willing to share this video to help people wake up to this? Share one of these articles, one of these links that I'm showing you. Are you willing to pass out a flyer? Are you willing to do any research to find out if your local police department has this? What are you willing to do? We all need to be willing to do something if there's ever going to be change, and I ask you to think about that and consider what you are willing to do. And if you're not willing or able to hit the streets, because I know some of you will say, and I've talked to some of you in person, I'm disabled, I'm unable, I'm busy with family and kids and things like that. I totally understand. So if you can't hit the streets, if you can't do the research, but you would like to support those of us who are, I ask that you support my ongoing crowdfunding campaign for the conscious resistance. We have literally just 2-3 days left if anybody wants to contribute. We've had 10 awesome people contribute. Our goal is 2,000. We've surpassed that goal. Now we made a new goal of 2,500, so that would be $112. If anybody wants to throw $5 our way, this is just going to continue to help us move forward. And as my mayoral campaign comes to an end, we'll be back to full-scale articles, weekly new articles, in-depth deep dive articles on the website, as well as the video reports, as well as more interviews that I've got scheduled coming up, and the documentaries. And all of this is being done thanks to your support, because of course people like me who talk about these things are being censored everywhere they go, and the only way I'll be able to survive going forward is with your help. So thank you guys for following, liking, watching, sharing, all the good things you do. Thank you for the work you do. Please contact me if you want to collaborate. Derrick at theconsciousresistance.com. And let's stay connected. Let's figure this out together. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.